am a primary school teacher. I've been a primary school teacher for about 18 years. I used to play a little bit of football when I was younger. Had trials at Villa. I was on the books at Walsall. Eric McManus.
What position did you play?
A centre forward.
Okay.
Eric McManus was the youth team manager back then. I played a bit of rugby, and then obviously been teaching for a fair few years. I used to write a bit like yourself, bit of poetry, and then always decided that when I was 40, I'd start writing.
Right.
And so when I was 40, I started to play around with writing, did a couple of courses and stuff, and it just grew from there. And so I suppose I am now Stuart Kane, the writer or the author, local lad just down the road from Moseley.
Is this your first book? Because it's in 2 books, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where's the Chris? Mm-hmm. Have we got the cameras? Where are the cameras? Because we want to show these 2 books over there at our camera.
There you go.
So one was released first, the
Yeah.
second was released after, but they were both written round about the same time during lockdown.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they've been written. It was over a 5-year period. So 5 years of research and reading everything I could on Robin Friday, and there is a lot out there if you search in the right places. And then obviously writing, editing, all of that. Yeah. First one was May 2020, and the second half was released in November 2020.
Why the titles Man Friday? Because there's a link. Well, it sounds like Robinson Crusoe, doesn't it? Man Friday.
Yeah. So I suppose it's a bit of a play on words. So it's I mean, he had a few nicknames at Reading, but they used to call him at Reading Man Friday, and there was an article done, and it's the first interview he ever did, which was probably February 74 with a guy called Linton Mitchell, and in that he's referred to in the headline as Man Friday, and that's where the photo on the cover of the first one comes from, and so I suppose it's that, and it's that Man Friday. And somebody said to me, "Well, why Man Friday?" I said, "Well, he's a man, and his name was Friday." Another way is that Robin could be a little light fingers at times, so let's take a big title like Man Friday from Robinson Crusoe, and we'll have that. So that fits as well. And of course, as I say, his nickname at Reading was Man Friday.
It works well. The colours of the books, the one's yellow and the one's white. Is that purposely done?
It is, yeah. So the first book, the sort of blue and white, is for the Reading fans, because obviously that's he had a good few years there, Player of the Year twice. And then the second book, which has his last half season at Reading, and then obviously Cardiff and what lies beyond. So I've gone for the yellow and blue after the Cardiff City, the Bluebirds. So
Now that Cardiff time, he played 22 games for Cardiff. He wasn't there very long.
Not at all.
But he's an iconic figure even now with the Cardiff supporters, and that's quite incredible when you look at how few games he actually played for them.
It is. I mean, he does divide opinion there. So you get your people that absolutely, love to hear anything about him, and you have other people say, "Oh, he only played this many games." There is that split. But yeah, I mean, his legend grows and grows, and I suppose it was from some of the stories around him that obviously he's, since there was that first, the super furry animals, the man don't give a. Yeah. You know what? So he's sort of grown from there, really. And so, he's just got bigger and bigger.
Now, there's not many footballers that are on covers of records, and Robin was.
Yeah.
Do you think that, and we're going to go back to who Robin Friday was and his early years shortly, but do you think that it was more for what he did off the pitch as well as on the pitch, how he's viewed as this iconic figure?
I think so. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, that the title of that first song, it's that.
Yeah.
I suppose it stands up for the, his stand against the man, if you like.
Because he didn't give one, did he?
No. I mean, there were I think I said at the end of the first book, when I talk about it in the afterwards, that he did, because I think you don't do some of the things that he did to himself if you. If you don't give a damn, if you know what I mean. But then there were clearly times where he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't care. I suppose it's as much about his football as it is about, like you say, that that rock and roll footballer. So you've got him on the pitch doing these amazing things, and then you've also got him out with the likes of you and I just going out for a beer and having a bit of fun. So I think people could relate to him, and I've heard so many stories from fans, where he'd just have a chat with them after a game or something, he'd be walking up with the fans to the games and stuff, and he was different. He just had an aura about him, and that's what I've heard from people that knew him.
To be fair, players in them days used to. Jimmy Greaves used to get on the bus and the train and that. Yeah. Football was the working man's game back then. I mean, it isn't now. And for the young kids listening and watching, seeing their heroes, you almost have to book a place to go and watch them train. They were part of us and we were part of them. So the Robin Friday, when did you sit down? At what point in your life did you think, do you know what, I really want to write this book on Robin Friday? What was that moment, that Eureka moment?
So that Eureka, I'd always sort of been interested in the story, and then I did a master's course at the University of Birmingham in creative writing. I was sitting down. I'd done like a sabbatical for a year, so I was still doing my supply teaching. And you have to, they do this thing where they workshop you. Basically, you hand out your stories and they crucify you for about half an hour. And so, so I wrote this story, and it honestly got torn to pieces. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now? And my next one was coming up. And then there was, the book we got there, Paolo's book. A friend of mine was a really big fan of that book. He really, he was always talking about it. And I was sat in this workshop with this lady, this writer called Emma Henderson, and she held up The Damned United, and she went, "Oh, this is worth a read." And I'd read it years ago, I think, when it first came out. And I thought, I'll read that again, and then I started to think of Paolo's book, and then I thought, okay, there's maybe, I could do something different with that, because, the biography's already been done. So let's, Robin Friday isn't in that story. Let's have Robin Friday in the story. And then a mate of mine who, didn't live too far from here, lived down the road in Acox Green, called Matt Tune. Lovely lad, super sharp, very clever. I got a phone call from a friend of mine saying, it's Matt. And I said, is he all right? I said, no, he's dead. And he died a year older than Robin. He was 39. We didn't know until afterwards. Hammersmith born. We always thought he was a Brummie because we'd known him since the 90s. And he was born in Hammersmith like Robin, and died with an open verdict. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm writing a book on Robin Friday. And at that time it was one book. I was just going to write one book on Robin Friday, and it was a big moment, and it was a short story. I say a book at that moment. It was a short story. So I sat down and locked myself away for a week, and just sat down and went through it. And it was very much about Robin's early life. I think I took him up to where he played Bristol Rovers, when he was playing for Hayes. Yeah. I took him up to about that point, so about 3,000 words, and I handed it in for a workshop where it was like, right, everyone's ready to attack you. And you don't say who's written it, but out it goes. So everyone pulls out the notes, and you look through, and he goes, and Emma just held up my piece of writing. She went, right, this here, this is where all of you are measured by. That is the bar, and it's that high. Well done, Stuart. And I was just like, it was a bit of a moment. It was a bit emotional, and then from that, I kind of thought, I want to do something with this, but I didn't know what. I thought, I'd like to do something, and I thought about it, and I started to do bits of research here and there, and start to go through the archives and things, and then I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the reader on a journey with Robin Friday, and layer it. So this, you can take as much or as little from the books as you want, but you go on the journey with him. So Man Friday, the first half, is that, from his beginnings to that grows up very fast to his pinnacle, really getting promoted to the third division, and then obviously the second half sort of charts, what happened after that, and the other side of it, really.
Now, your journey, did you ever feel like getting off that train?
Yeah. I don't know if you know about this, but it was hard. I mean, like I'm talking years of sleepless. I mean, it was a project I was really passionate about, and I think when you get into a character like Robin, who is so complex, and you know, people have very different opinions about him, and you know, I wanted to try and take all of that and go, right, let's have him all. Yeah. You know, let's put it all in, because he was, you know, he was a complex character, and I think it was one Saturday. I played tennis very badly. I've not played, obviously, because of COVID and stuff. And I got on my bike to play my mate Nick down at Billesley tennis courts, right? So I'm going on bike, play tennis, win obviously, and then I'm coming back up on my bike up Billesley Lane. And sorry, the night before, I decided I'm not writing this. I'm stopping. Can't do this anymore. It's, you know, it's doing my nut in.
At what stage was that? How far in the book were you at that time?
I was probably about 2 years into the project. Sure. So I was about 2 years in. I just thought I'd spent, I'd given up weekends, I'd given up nights out, given up family life, lots of different sort of things, and I'd, not saying I'd become a recluse, but I worked on it because I wanted it to be perfect. And it was a Friday night, and I just gone, do you know what? Give yourself a break, Stuart. Just leave this to other people. So there was a weight lifted off my shoulder, and I was like, I feel great. I slept really soundly on that Friday night. As I say, played my mate at tennis. Anyway, I'm coming on my push bike, tennis racket over my shoulder, and ambling down the Billesley Lane, just so you come up to the top round from the corner from where I live. There's the posh tennis courts, Moseley tennis courts, where I am not a member. Yeah. And we're coming up there, and there is a lad with brown hair down to here, and he's wearing a Reading shirt, a modern Reading shirt, and he's got a tennis racket over his shoulder. He's listening to earphones, and he's just strolling along like this. And I just went, "You've got to be joking!" And I looked at this lad, and I just went, "Robin Friday, and he takes off his things, just goes Robin Friday like this, and on again to go home. And I was like, "Yeah, that's kind of a message, isn't it?" Yeah. Which is a bit weird, but obviously there are coincidences a lot in life, but that was a bit of an odd one. So I thought, okay, I think I've just got to carry on with this.
Have you seen that lad since in Moseley? Have you bumped into him since?
I haven't.
It's mad, innit?
But if I did, I would definitely buy him a few pints. It was. I mean, with writing the whole story, there's been some really strange coincidences that have thrown them.
What's the strangest?
What's the strange? I don't know. I suppose that was pretty strange. I had one where I was at the archives down in London, and I'd uncovered some things on Robin that hadn't sort of seen the light of day for 40 years. And the fire alarm suddenly went off. So I'm down in London in the archives, and then all of a sudden I'm like, here we go. Everyone evacuates. The registers are left open, everything left in there, out you go. And I was out there for a good hour and a half, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And I said to David Giles, Gilo, who played at Cardiff City, the former Welsh international, and he said, that's just like Robin. That's the sort of stuff he'd do. That was his sense of humour. He had a friend down when he was at Reading, because he was very friendly with the taxi drivers there. I got chatting to somebody that said, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely getting your book." And he said, my uncle used to know him, and I said, "Oh, did he?" I said, "What? How did he know him?" He said, "Oh, my uncle's a taxi driver." I said, "His name wasn't Pat, was it?" He went, "Pat, do you know him?" I said, "Pat Hanrahan's in the book." And so that, just little things like that. And he had a friend called Frank Kane when he was in Reading, Frank Tiddles Kane, again, spelt my way. Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, it might be a distant relation, but yeah, again, just, I don't know. I suppose when you look at somebody's story, and particularly Robin's, there are some really strange coincidences in his story.
The early life of Robin. Yeah. Who was Robin Friday?
Robin Friday was a very complex individual, I think. I mean, if you read up on his early stuff, and I suppose the way that I portray him, it's like a lot of lads, I suppose, he was mad about his football, but he was quite shy. He was quite a shy person. And it wasn't till he got, he went to Faraday that things started to change a little bit for him. Was it going there? I don't know. There was a set of different influences. I think Tony said that he hung around with older kids basically, and so was getting involved in different stuff. So there were changes there, but then. I think, as I play with it in my book, he had to grow up fast. At 17, he's married and he's got a little one.
Because when he was a kid, and let's just dwell on him being a kid at the moment, the family moved to the estate, didn't they? And that seemed to be a really turning point for them. And then going to the comprehensive school. So, also, he had trials at Palace, at Chelsea, Queen's Park Rangers, Reading as well, that all of them turned him down at a young age. That's big rejection for a young kid.
Yeah.
And someone with a rebellious personality.
Yeah.
Do you think he just thought, football probably isn't for me, but birds are, and drink is, and then clearly when you're in that situation, you find things that are heavier as well, as Robin did. He indulged in everything, and he didn't just live his life in a fast lane. He put his foot down on the fast lane, didn't he?
Yeah, he definitely did. I mean, I think you're right where you talk about moving to the estate, because they could. I think it's mentioned not in my book, but they couldn't keep an eye on him as much, and so he was out and about, and getting into all sorts, and it was a tough estate. There were gangs and things like that. I mean, if you read the Acton newspapers, there's all sorts of stuff going on there. But I think when you talk about the rejection, I think there was QPR. He wasn't actually at Crystal Palace. It was, I think he did some training with, I think it was Crystal Palace Youth Club or something. It wasn't actually that it wasn't affiliated with the football club, but rejected from QPR. And as it happens, I don't know if you guys have got the experience of it, where you start off, there's a big group of you, and eventually they don't have as many teams as they do in the academies now, but you have this big group of lads that eventually just get smaller and smaller and smaller. And he did have that, and he said he said it made him feel sick. The rejection from Chelsea in particular said it made him feel sick,
because he was a good footballer.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, he went and played the game professionally.
Yeah.
He played at a good level in non-league. But he also played district football when he was a kid. He played in the same district team as Steve Perryman, didn't he?
At Ealing. He was at Ealing District. I don't know if that's the one, but he definitely played for Ealing District. So he was definitely talented. I think there's a photo of him I've seen, and he's in goal, isn't he? He's in goal.
Yeah, goalkeeper.
Yeah. He was in goal, and I think he'd have made a terrific goalkeeper. He was an all-round sportsman. He could box, he could play tennis. He was a good cricketer, and that's a bowler as well as a batsman as well. So he had all that in his bag.
And he also loved music. Music was a massive love, and an eclectic mix of loves of music. He liked the ska music. He liked a bit of heavy metal. He liked Janis Joplin was his favourite artist. Yeah. And he also had an Everton kit when he was a kid as well.
He did, the Everton kit. So I think they were the big team back then, weren't they?
Yeah, they were 70. Won the league.
He followed them, and obviously later on I suppose he got into his local club, which was Brentford. But I was the same. I was a Liverpool fan as a kid, and then obviously you support your local team, don't you?
So he's gone through this, and then he's almost bumped into and got into things by association, which is what most of us do, whether that be jobs, whether that be football, clubs, social clubs, etc. And knocking around that scene, the next progression was going out and playing football, turning up with your boot bags on a Sunday and playing a reasonable standard of football. That then leads to non-league. And Hayes was the place that he really forged a fledgling career in football. But at Walthamstow, before that, that's where he got his job as an asphalter, didn't he?
He certainly did. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the old asphalting. Walthamstow Avenue, and then I think he transferred over to Hayes, and he's got a great record at Hayes. It's 40 odd goals in 60 games, and obviously that was where the accident had. But his manager then was a head teacher, an old schoolmaster called Bob Gibbs. Robin didn't call him Bob Gibbs; he called him Giblet. He called him Giblet, and I think he was able to manage because he was used to managing different people as you do being a teacher, particularly as a head teacher, and he knew how to manage Robin, and he had to obviously treat him at times with kid gloves. Don't worry, you don't have to wear the blazer. And there are stories of Robin turning up with he'd have his heavy metal t-shirt on, with the no arms on it, and for a weekend away up in Cleethorpes where they've got to play football and stuff. He was his own person, really, his own man.
You're never going to mould a person like Robin Friday, because he lived this bohemian lifestyle anyhow, and we did reference Moseley earlier. He wouldn't look out of place on Moseley High Street, would he?
Definitely. Yeah, he'd have fitted right in there, I think.
Now, while he was a young kid, 20, leading up to his 21st birthday and working on the asphalt, he fell off the scaffold and a spike impaled him right up the jacksie.
It did.
That was unbelievable that he actually, didn't kill him, didn't pierce any of his vitals. On another day, it possibly could have. But many people have looked at that and thought, was that the turning point for Robin? Did he then think, well, this is almost my second life? But by reading things and looking at it, he was always in a bit of trouble before that, so possibly not really.
I think so. There is a few of the lads that played with him at Reading that say they think it was that moment that changed him, whereas I don't care, I'm just gonna live my life. But like you say, and that's what I go with really, that he wasn't angelic prior to that. He was he was messing around with everything. But I mean, to have the strength to get through that. I mean, he didn't just fall onto that stake. He actually he had the strength to push himself off it as well.
Which isn't the brightest of things to do, is it? Because when you're in there, you're supposed to leave it in there and let professionals take it out. Yeah.
So he got off there, and I think he was in surgery anyway. I guess it was, we'll never know.
Several hours, yeah.
For between 4 and 6 hours, and it was touch and go. And obviously back then, I think there's a photo you can see where he's jumping up for a corner for Reading, and his jersey's riding up, and you can see the scar next to his belly button, because he had to go around with his stomach in a bag for 3 months after that. Now that is, we're not, you do that now, obviously it's different, but back then, to have that strength. But again, this is part of it, is you got that, you're going to be on some strong painkillers there, which will have
But he was on strong painkillers before.
That's it. So 3 months he's got his stomach in a bag, and then he's off. He's playing he's back on the pitch with Hayes, playing in cup games against Bristol Rovers and Reading. I mean, it's I think just incredible to have the strength to think, well, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to carry on doing this, rather than just think, well, that's me. Yeah, that's me done.
And it was that Reading game that really Charlie Hurley, the manager, then brought him in to Reading and made him a professional footballer.
It was the cup games were 70. It was the 72-73 season. So they beat Rovers and had the 2 games against Reading, and that 72-73 season. And it wasn't another year until he actually brought him to Reading.
Got ya.
So that he did keep an eye on him, because he did hear the stories, and then I went. I think it was about half a dozen times he went back to go and have a look. And then what happened was, at the start of the 73-74 season. Now in that season, you could, for non-league, you could go and play, like I could play for your team one week, and then and you pay me, and then I'll go and play for Chris's team the next week. The registrations had gone out the window, so Robin was basically he was at Hayes, then he was at Enfield for a few games, who they then met in the cup, in the FA Cup qualifying games. You couldn't make it up. They were having a fight over who was going to keep him. Enfield went through in the end. He played 3 games for Enfield. Then he was off. Then he was connected to Walton and Hersham. Alan Batsford, they were looking for a striker there. Alan Batsford comes into the story later on. And then at the same time, in the week, he was sort of trialling with Reading, but he wouldn't play on the weekends for Reading because obviously he was playing for Hayes or somebody else. So it was, and Charlie Hurley's like, was trying to work, trying to suss him out. What this lad can play, can I handle him?
And you're right, it's the baggage, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to be fair, Reading were in the 4th division in those days.
Yeah.
When they eventually got promoted, that was the first time in 50 years. Reading were pretty much a poor side.
They were, yeah.
And a desperate side.
Yeah.
And I guess the fact that he thought, do you know what? I'll take a gamble. If it was a 2nd division team or even a 3rd division team, probably wouldn't have. But it's just that the stars aligned at that time, and he thought, you know what, we'll take a gamble on him, and it was a good gamble that paid off for him.
Definitely, and I think you're right when you say that the stars aligned, as they so often do, sort of in Robin's story, positively and negatively, that things sort of seem to come around. It's really strange. I mean, he was £750, wasn't he, from Hayes, and he was still playing for them when he was still playing for them when he was at Reading, and they sort of signed him, and he was still playing on a Saturday, and I think he turned out on for them the following day or what have you. But once he turned out for Charlie, like you say, he had loads of injuries going on, because I've obviously read in the papers he had quite a few injuries, and it was like, I've got this lad here that looks like he can play, and he scares my players. Let's put him in.
And he did in training as well, didn't he? He almost took a few of them out, didn't he?
He definitely did, yeah. He did. Jimmy Warbanks was the trainer then, and the physio, and he did. And I think that was him in training. He had to be, it was a cup final, or you play on a Saturday. So there's no, I'm just gonna, do this 50. He got stuck in, and obviously wanted to prove a point to some of those pros. But they looked at him and thought, this guy has come from look at this guy. How many more of these out there? And these are people, and it's so precarious, I think, being down in there in that lower league, particularly back then. It's like you can be gone just like that. Yeah, off you go, mate. We'll sign this non-league. And it's not like today when there's that massive gulf between the 4th tier and the top tier. It was, to my mind anyway, was a lot closer, really.
I think the 70s were, for me, the halcyon days. I grew up in the 70s. We had characters.
Yeah.
Like Robin, like Alan Hudson, like Charlie George, like Georgie Best. We had pitches that weren't very good. There was almost, when you're playing, there was different obstacles that you had to overcome whilst you're playing. You weren't playing on these bowling green pitches like they are today. Every game was a different experience, if you like. Now, Robin clattered a few in training. He got his debut away at Northampton. Now, did you talk to many Reading supporters about Robin? Because my take is, before Robin Friday, they were doing nothing apart from being bored out the schools, drinking heavily. This is the fans, not the players, and fighting amongst themselves because there was nothing else to do. Robin come and changed it, didn't he?
He did. He almost immediately, really. I mean, he made his debut at Northampton on the cricket pitch, as you do. They had the old Meccano stand, didn't they? And that was a 3-3 draw. But in that game, now his first game, straight out of non-league, he's in the middle of the park and he's doing keepy uppies in the middle of the game. To have the confidence to do that, and and he could have scored. He nearly scored, which would that would have been remarkable. But I think he was involved in all the goals. But unfortunately, at the other end, Reading's defence at the time, not Steve Death because he was incredible, but the Reading defence were a little bit shaky. But in terms of me talking to the fans, I've spoken to loads of people. So before I wrote those books, I didn't really talk to anyone because I was quite conscious of the fact I wanted it to be, and to give myself a challenge, I suppose. I wanted to try and get as close to Robin Friday without other people's opinions, really. Yeah. You just read. I read everything and just come back for it and thought, okay, what can I do with this? And what I've had since, I mean, as I say, there were 2 lads I spoke to at Cardiff before the second half, but other than that, I haven't. But the feedback I've had since has just been, incredible. And they, like you say, they said that it was just boring, and then he turns up, and it's this, the Messiah is coming. He was incredible. What was noticed about him, to give him some sort of, to put it in reality, was his positional play. He's come from he just does what he wanted to do. Yeah. That wasn't always spot on his positional play, because it was a case of him saying, I'll do this with him. But yeah, he certainly rocked Elm Park, and it was his home debut, wasn't it, against Exeter, where the heavens open and he scores a couple of goals, and he's it's incredible. And from that moment on, they absolutely loved him.
And again, loved him for as much as what he done off the pitch.
Yeah.
For on the pitch, because he was banned from a Reading pub 10 times, wasn't he?
I think
is that true? Because the thing is with Robin, there's that many stories that I don't know whether they're true or they're fiction. Yeah. But kind of looking and reading and listening to people, they probably are true.
Yeah. I think that's probably why I wrote what I wrote, is because having a fact-based fiction, the scores, all that, and various other factual things are correct, but you have got that other part where you can have a license, but staying true to his spirit and character, not going completely out there with it, and basing it in some sort of reality and making it authentic. But yeah, I think it was different pubs that he got banned from. It wasn't just the Boar's Head. There were quite a number of them that he was quite well known in. And it's sad really when you go down there that the Boar's Head isn't there anymore. It's an Ibis hotel, but you can sit in a little pub opposite it and imagine what it would have been like. But yeah, I mean, it's funny if you go through YouTube, or you see, or you're on Facebook or Twitter, you have all these people just have their little Robin Friday moments, like, oh, my dad says this, or he saw him fall out of a pub in his yellow cowboy boots, and he said all right, and just these little moments. And I can think, that's a real one, that's not, and because there are obviously people that just make stuff up, aren't there?
Afghan coat and hobnail boots. Is that true in the Robin Room?
I believe that the Churchill's Club is true. Yeah, was this seedy little pub that it was the club that, if you were banned from everywhere else, it was that, we've got them here, haven't we?
The Gary Owen.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. God, that takes me back. And I don't know if you ever went to the Elbow Room. That's another. Yeah. I used to know those guys.
Talk of the town on the Stratford Road.
Yeah. There you go. And so they go there, and there is that is true. These, obviously he's had a few and what have you, and anything else at that time. And there was the little cupboard and all of that going on.
Yeah. The swans, is that true? Any evidence that the swans were true? He borrowed a swan.
So I suppose we might, like, there are bits in there. What I wanted it to be about is football. I wanted it to be a bit a celebration, but I wanted it to be true. What I didn't want is load of anecdotes. The swan one, I'm sure it did happen. I can imagine him doing that, but I didn't put it in my book. But I'm pretty sure that.
Did you talk about the wedding, because that was quite an event, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And a memorable event. You wouldn't forget that if you attended that wedding, would you?
I think anybody that was at that wedding would never ever forget that. I mean,
and most were off the face, wasn't they?
Yeah, they were. I mean, they all were, and then obviously somebody apparently spiked the. I think Lisa talks about it in a documentary, and she said that somebody spiked the fruit punch, and You had grannies and grandmas gamboling on the lawns outside because they'd hired this big.
But it was LSD, wasn't it, that they spiked it with?
Just drip it in and off you go. So obviously
Imagine me and that going.
That's what I mean. But also that strange thing of I've only had 3 sherries. What's going on? And then all that is going on. And yeah, I mean, there he is outside, and they've got the camera crew from the Southern TV filming them and everything, and they're both on substances trying to get themselves through their wedding vows, and then bang into the white roller, off you go. And then they're off to Amsterdam for a few. I think it was about 4 or 5 days before he had to land back on the Wednesday to then go straight into training.
Now, it was on the Saturday, and Reading were playing, and there were a number of fans that turned up to the wedding rather than go and watch Reading at Elm Park.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was just a pre-season friendly against Charlton Athletic. Yeah. So I guess some of them were like, do I want to watch them, or do I want to go and watch my hero get tie the knot? So apparently it was.
Was it church or Red Travis?
It was a church. Yeah. It was the Oxford Road Methodist Church, if my memory serves me correctly, which isn't there anymore. They've knocked it down, but yeah, it was.
And the bridesmaid was Lisa's sister.
Apparently, yeah.
Apparently, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I
she had 5 pills.
So yeah, and then
I do.
Yeah, exactly.
You nearly married the wrong one.
I'm sure. And I suppose with that as well, all of that going on. I mean, how they got through it, I do not know, but they managed it, and then to go to Amsterdam of all places. Quite a thing.
Now, back on the pitch, the goal against Tranmere, one of the greatest goals that Reading fans had seen. Clive the Book Thomas was the referee that day. Yeah. It was 1977, was it? So it was
76.
Before 76. Yeah. So it was before the 78 World Cup finals when he disallowed Zico's goal to come out from it. He was always controversial, wasn't he, Clive?
He liked to be the centre of attention, didn't he? I did a bit of reading round on him, and he was always he's one of those Marmite characters. But if he gave something for your team, I'm sure he'd be behind him. But he quite often it was you've got that. There are a few beautiful shots. There's somebody on Twitter that a guy that he's a Reading historian, and he keeps all this stuff, and he's got this wonderful thing. I think he was maybe 8 or 9 at the time. And he's cut it out of the local paper, and it just shows you, because Robin's not in, you can't see him. Yeah. He's sort of hiding behind a Tranmere defender, but you just see that the Tranmere defenders who are sort of active one moment, and then as the ball goes in, they're just stunned. They're just stood there like soldiers. But yeah, they say that was really because Tranmere were their local rivals, not their local rivals, their rivals to get promoted into the third. And so there was this thing, but they were 2-0 up, and then obviously Robin being Robin, 69th minute, having just celebrated his 69th birthday, but 69th minute, he just pulls that out of the bag, and you can see Clive Thomas just just like that, and applauds the goal, and just couldn't believe it. And there's the other thing that and that sort of cemented it to hammer them 5-0, sort of gave them the confidence to go, we can do this now, because they're all there were questions about the season before, could they have done it. That was obviously where you had the kissing the policeman, the Rochdale game, and all of that, but that sort of cemented it, and that was I think they just really turned up that night. Minty Murray, John Murray had a stormer that night as well. Just as a team, they performed, and then obviously Robin just did what Robin.
And the kissing of the copper, it was a full-on smack on the lips, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Took the hat off and kiss.
He sort of held him by the cheeks, and kissed him on the lips. There's a lovely from the local paper that night. There's you've got it where there's Robin. There's a cartoon of Robin with his bandy legs. And you've got him, and then this line of coppers behind him saying "me next." It's and that's I just think those little moments like that are lovely. And for if you're a kid watching that, that's your hero there. Forget about all the other stuff going on, but it's just it must have just been magical, absolutely magical.
Now, his time ups and downs, and leading into the time when he got transferred, he was at a hippie commune, wasn't he?
Apparently so. Yeah, that was
Any
that
truth
was
about
early
that
on.
in Cornwall?
That was the summer of 74. Yeah, that's.
It was earlier than that. Got you.
Yeah, so he'd signed in January 74 as an amateur, February 74 on pro terms about 5 days after. Right, sign him up quickly, and then finished up in the May, and then off he went to the hippie commune. So that was quite early on, and obviously he came back. And they had a game against Watford. He'd obviously done no training. He was, just his drinking arm. And he turns up and, knocks them for 6. And Maurice Evans had just joined then as the coach.
Yes.
And he was just like, and obviously, he had an incredible record later on, Maurice. A real gentleman. And he was just, wow, look at this kid go.
The conversation with Maurice was quality as well, wasn't it?
That one later on. There's
Robin. If you put your mind to it, you take up that story.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It is. It's that if you could just put your mind to it and concentrate on the game. In a few years you could be playing for England. It's like what was his retort? It was I've lived twice your life and I'm half your age, sort of thing. And I'm pretty sure that that happened. But then again, there's things I've looked into around that, because obviously when Paolo wrote his book, it was about 20 years after Robin had finished playing, and tempers had...
Yeah, it was 97, 98, wasn't it, when that book came out, Giggsy?
Tempers people had calmed down a little bit, but at the time, people were annoyed, including Maurice, about how Robin had carried on, because he loved him. He wanted him to change. Jimmy Andrews loved him. They wanted him to change, but Robin was Robin.
Because again, there was talk, there was speculation. How good was Robin Friday? Well, we don't actually know, because he did just play in the 4th division and then got transferred to Cardiff in the 2nd division. Now, even if he was a great football player, playing and plying his trade in the 1st division, as he may well have done, because he retired at 25.
Yeah.
So before he's peaked, he's actually retired. There is no way that he would have played for England, because one reason, and that was Don Revie.
Mr. Revie.
And it didn't matter how good you were as a player.
Yeah.
Our Mavericks were always overlooked by Revie because of their lifestyle didn't fit into how Don wanted his players to be on the football pitch. He wanted players he could trust, not players that could deliver.
That's exactly it. And he didn't like them. That they wouldn't have got on at all with them. I suppose Robin is always, and back then was always compared to Stan Bowles. They'd say, they were very similar in the way that they approached the game. But like you say, Don Revie, when he had, was it Stan at they were training, and Don Revie turned around and said, "Right, lads, I got you 300 quid for appearance fee every time you play for England." And it was, I think Emily Hughes was, I don't want that. I don't want. I'll play for England for free. I don't want that. Yeah. And Stan just turned around and was like, I'll have yours then. And that he said they didn't talk to him that week, and I don't think he really played again after that. He just, there was no room for that sort of personality.
There wasn't, and again, that was Stan. I mean, Stan had a heavy addiction to betting. Stan loved a bet. There's no dispute about that. Yeah. And Robin loved
doing everything.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think with Robin as well, like you say, technical ability, he could have played in the old 1st division, but it was his discipline. Now from the lads, that had played at that level, be it a Peter Reid or somebody like that, they say they just had breathtaking ability. And they do say, even Tony's brother says that the only thing he didn't have bags of was his speed. Once he got up running, he could have he had a bit of pace on him, but he didn't need to have that because of what he could do with the ball. He just seemed to be able to just pull it out of nowhere. He just had this amazing ability, and it's would it have been one of his regrets not making it? I think he lived a life in his way. He might have had a little regret later on about it, but it's one of those, he lived his life the way he sort of wanted.
But when you've got someone like Peter Reid,
yeah,
talking him up. I mean, Reedy, one of the great midfield players that we've had. I mean, Reedy whether he was captain of Everton at the time when they won the league and won everything is irrelevant, because Everton had a team of captains and Reedy was instrumental. Reedy knows. Yeah. In fact, Reedy retweeted one of your tweets the other day, didn't he?
He did. I mean, if you think about Peter Reid, who sort of faced Maradona at his peak, basically, peak in '86 around that area. He sort of he played in his last game. Peter Reid played because a lot of people, although it has been updated recently, a lot of people think that Robin's last game for Cardiff was Brighton.
Yes,
it wasn't. It was Bolton.
Right,
so he remained at the club for another good 6+ weeks after that, like playing in the reserves, trying to get back.
Yeah,
and then he made a comeback in that game, and it was against Bolton Wanderers up at Bolton's place, and there was Frank Worthington playing for Bolton, there was Peter Reid, Sam Allardyce, and it was 6-3 to Bolton, and Robin left the field after about 50 odd minutes, got subbed off, and then he played in another reserve game against Southampton. He'd got a couple of knocks to his knees. He was struggling with his cartilage, and then that was coming to the end. There was all sorts going on. He was getting fined. He was getting banned. Loads of stuff.
Now he moved from Reading to Cardiff, so we've got to talk about the Cardiff years. Is what is widely perceived as his last game for Cardiff was against Brighton and Hove Albion. And the Mark Lawrenson incident.
Yeah.
Now again, the defecation in there. That probably isn't true, but I did read somewhere that there's a game against Mansfield that it might be correct.
Now I can say it with some certainty that in that Mansfield game, I believe he did, almost 100%, because I think David Downs spoke about the old Reading historian who I've spoken to a few times, a wonderful guy who just knows Reading inside out. So he sort of spoke about it and said, we think it did happen, because he literally, there were a load of scouts watching. There were about 17 scouts from 17 different clubs watching, and he got a proper kicking, Robin, that game. Like, they went for him. There's one tackle where two of them went in on him, and Robin somehow, I don't know how he managed to get out. He got a walloping in it, but he somehow managed to. One of the players went into him so hard, the guy dislocated his. Popped his elbow, so they really went for him that game, and I think there were things going on but behind the scenes at Reading anyway with Robin, and then I think he went in there, and if you look in the local paper, the Reading Evening Post, David Dibbin, the reporter, the headline is "Reading turning a stinker." Now, you got it. I would say with some certainty that I think that did happen.
Now, that Cardiff move, there was something that happened round the signing of Robin Friday at Cardiff. What was happening in them days when he signed?
When basically Charlie found out that Robin was doing what he was doing outside of doing the drugs, and he's like, "You're a professional footballer. I can't have you doing that." But what had happened over the summer, the main and I suppose the where it all centres was the contract. So there was a new contract that came. I think he was given an extra £5, to which he thought, "Hold it, I'm worth more, £5 for I've got you promoted for the first time in 50 years." And he did get them promoted. I know there were other lads playing and they were incredible, but I've had people say to me, it was him. He pulled us up. You can say this, you can say that about him, but he did. He gave his all, 110%. And when he got that contract, he was like, "What's the point?"
Yeah.
And that, I think, was the singular moment where he sort of thought, "What's the point then?
Yeah.
I might as well just go out, do what I'm doing, and that's it." And I think, I think that did have an impact because he thought, I'm not being rewarded here. And then obviously, I think if you look at the papers from the time he was, Wolves looked at him. Ron Saunders was a massive Robin Friday fan.
Imagine him at the Villa.
Yeah, incredible.
Saunders was a real disciplinarian as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And again, that would have dissuaded lots of managers at the top level.
Definitely.
To not play him.
So you got the connection. Eamon Dunphy obviously played for the Republic, and then you got John Giles in there, who was, the West Brom player manager. So I think he had a little look.
And what a player, Giles!
Incredible!
What a player!
He's just amazing, perfect in every way. But I think he looked at Robin, but they just looked at him, and Robin was Robin. Now somebody's turning up to sign him. He doesn't suddenly, we go for a job interview, we suddenly change. No, he's just him. And that's it, he'll sit and have a drink and what have you. And so that didn't impress. Arsenal looked at him, Bertie Mee looked at him quite a bit as well. But yeah, and so obviously I think once Charlie knew what was going on behind the scenes really, and he thought, I can't carry on with this because I'll,
Did Cardiff know of his drug taking when they signed him?
Well, they didn't even know he had asthma when they signed him. Yeah, they didn't even know he had asthma. So,
mind you, Ian Wright had asthma as well. I mean, there are a number of footballers, isn't there?
There definitely are. But I suppose back then you're having your physio before your game was a little bit different.
Yeah.
But that got bypassed. Nothing was passed on. And Cardiff had looked at him quite a few times. And if you, I don't know if you've seen, but there was talk of Robin would be worth 100 grand. Then it dropped to 60. Then it dropped to 30, and then it finished off around, I think it was about 28,000 in the end. So I think Cardiff at the time, and it's difficult when you look, Cardiff are a really proud club, but back then they had a lot of problems going on. They didn't have a lot of money, so they took a chance. They took a chance on Wenty, Paul Went that was there. They took a chance on signing Robin. It was a gamble. So they'd have known bits about him, but they'd have just thought, he likes going out on the lash, not everything, not everything else. And I think that was the difference. But then, not so long after the move, that would, I think, become more known, because it wasn't long before Robin was on Charlie Hurley's doorstep saying, can I come back, boss? It was, and I think for Robin was a home bird.
Yeah,
I think the London clubs would have suited him, but then it'd have been with a different crowd. That would have happened? Probably. Well, I think probably, but I think Cardiff was just for him was just a bit too. Sort of, he felt maybe it was out the way.
How do the Cardiff supporters perceive Robin Friday, and what was the highlight of Robin's time at Cardiff?
So they perceive it's a mixed bag. So those people absolutely love him. Obviously, a lot of those, there are people that watched him and absolutely loved him, that saw the games against Luton, Wolves, Fulham, etc. But then you've got people that are like, no, he only played that many games for us, he let us down. And so, same with all clubs, it's that. And so he divides opinion. I mean, I suppose a lot of his fans wouldn't have even, seen him play, because when he became the BBC cult hero for Reading and Cardiff, that was 2002, I think. So a lot of them wouldn't have seen him play. So there is a mixed bag. But his highlights: Fulham, the debut, Bobby Moore. He's been out the night before.
The grabbing.
Grabbing, Bobby Moore and his single crown jewel, and running him ragged. Now, obviously, you got to take. I think Bobby was probably 33 at the time.
Yeah, so Bobby was. Yeah,
so he wasn't at his peak, but
also Bobby had only played at the top level, and moving down to that second division. I think even the great Bobby Moore found it difficult at first to because different dynamics. Even in them days, playing second division football to playing top level football.
Definitely. So there was that, and obviously Robin was Robin, and made himself known, and turns up, Ninian Park. George Best was meant to play, but obviously that he didn't. but he did watch Robin play. He was in the crowd for that game.
Did he ever go out with George? I mean, that would have been a night out, wouldn't it? Alan Hudson, George Best and Robin Friday.
Can you imagine? I think that would have been interesting, wouldn't it? I mean, George did live down in Berkshire for a while, didn't he? But, I mean, they'd have certainly seen each other after that Cardiff-Fulham game. But other than that, I don't know, they might have bumped into each other in pubs in London here and there over the years. But, yeah, so there was the Cardiff, there was the Wolves game, which was a big highlight for Robin. But Robin was a sub that game.
Yeah.
And he came on and literally, Wolves, who were then, they were at the top. They were top of the second division then, and you know
that would have been the year that they won it, 77.
Yeah, that was the year
Forest went up.
Yeah,
when
third.
Kenny Ibbett scored the goal at Bolton last game of the season.
Yeah, that's it. So that with that in mind, he came on and totally changed the game. So I think he came up half an hour left.
Yeah,
2-0 at that point to Wolves. He comes in, makes himself known as he did, and that's it. Bang, 2-2, and that, you know, a vital point. And they did obviously manage to stay up that season, because it was touch and go for Cardiff that season.
So he's left Cardiff. What happened next?
So he left. So when he left Cardiff, he left Cardiff in 77, but he did try to come back. He did try. He spoke to Jimmy Andrews in the summer of 78 about trying to come back, but Jimmy wouldn't take him. There was talk of him going to Reading, and Morris said no, thank you. And so eventually he went to Hillingdon Borough, and he played a couple of games for them. But again, that was with Alan Batsford, and then he sort of disappeared. He did train a little bit with Brentford a season after, but that went because obviously his addiction issues started to
Stuart, how can we buy the book? How can people that haven't got the book buy the book? And a shout out for your socials as well.
Okay, yeah.
Because he retired at 25.
Yeah.
And sadly he died.
Yeah, he
at
did.
38. But all that is in the book.
Everything.
And we kind of want to talk more about the lovely things about Robin Friday rather than, you know.
I mean, the books are a celebration, but an honest look, and you can get them on Amazon. So amazon.co.uk. You can follow me at Stuart J. Kane on Twitter or Instagram. And I love hearing from the fans, I really do. And
Instagram as well seems to be very popular with the youngsters these days, and I'm sure some of your kids with Instagram.
I'm on that as well. Yeah, that's at Stuart J. Kane, and on Facebook as well. So yeah, always happy to get in.
And finally, what are you going to be doing next? Because it's took you 5 years to do that. We've had a pandemic, so it made it slightly easier, I'm guessing, but sometimes not.
Yeah,
being a teacher,
it'll be a tricky one. So obviously, I carry on with my teaching, but I'm going to write a book, something a little bit different. Yeah.
Football based.
There'll be a little bit of football in it, but it's a novel. It's a bit of everything. It's a bit of a social commentary, I think. So, yeah, about sort of care and things like that. There'll be quite a lot. We'll see. I won't say too much on it. Won't put the pressure on myself.
Have you already started it?
I started making the notes and stuff. Yeah, and sort of begun in earnest, and then it sort of starts.
How long are you going to give yourself on it?
I think I'll do it in a couple of years.
Sure.
Because I'll need less research for this than I did for obviously Robin's.
Yeah. Well, can I thank you, sir, so much for your time, and
Cheers,
thank
Gabbie.
you everybody for listening and watching. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you so much.
And good luck with everything that you do in the future. In 2 years' time, come back in here and we'll talk about this wonderful novel that you're currently writing.
Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers, pal. Appreciate your time.
That's great. Thank you.